Hey guys, what's up? I'm Marissa. I'm an English teacher and an avid book reader, and I am so excited to make today's video because today we are reviewing booktuber Haley Pham's first book, Just Friends. I'm so excited to review this book because I have been anxiously awaiting this book's release ever since she announced it. And I will just give a disclaimer before we get into the review that I am definitely not unbiased. Obviously, I don't know Haley in real life, but I've been watching her on YouTube for several years and I'm a really huge fan of hers. So it's kind of hard to give an unbiased review about an author that I have been following for years and I'm very fond of, even if I don't actually know her in real life. But just wanted to put that out there. So without further ado, let's talk about my thoughts on Just Friends. Okay, so let's just get out of the way some things that I disliked about this book before we get into the many things that I really did enjoy about it. So my first criticism has to be that this book contains two of my least favorite book tropes. Now this is just a personal preference, so I guess I shouldn't call it a criticism. These are just things that I didn't like personally. I hate the miscommunication trope. If you guys have watched any of my videos, you know that I hate that trope. And another trope that I really don't enjoy is I don't know exactly what to call it, but the trope of one character pushing the other character away instead of communicating. So I guess it kind of is the miscommunication trope, but it's just taking a different form. And the reason that I hate this trope is I just feel like if you're going to be in an adult relationship or any type of relationship, then you need to be mature enough to speak your feelings and communicate, because communication is the bedrock of all good relationships in my opinion. But I will say that I understand, especially when it deals with young adults, which part of this book does, and just in life in general, miscommunication happens, and pushing people away because you have trust issues or you've been burned in the past absolutely happens, and that is something that people have to work through. I just personally find it grating to read about and hard to read. It just frustrates me. Now, secondly, something else that I did not like about this book is that it was only one POV, so you never get Declan's point of view. You only get Blair's point of view throughout the entirety of the book. Now, not all romance books have to be multiple point of view or dual POV, but I just would have liked to see Blair through Declan's eyes. So I had color-coded tabs for quotes that Blair said about Declan, and I have so many of those, and I only have two, or I guess three, tabs about Blair, because like, obviously she's not going to say super sweet and romantic things about herself. So I just would have liked to see her through his point of view. My last criticism that I will give about this book is that it's marketed as contemporary romance or just romance, but it reads more like young adult romance, which is not bad. I personally enjoy young adult some of the time, but I just like to know what it is going into it. Now, let's get into the multiple things that I loved about this book. First of all, the writing I really enjoyed, and I did make a lot of tabs about the writing and quotes that I enjoyed. I'll read just a few of them to kind of show you guys what I'm talking about. But first of all, the way that she describes the setting throughout the book is really beautiful. So one of the things she says is, an overhang of trees makes it seem like the town is wearing a beret, and flowers and blooms seemingly all year dot the quaint cottages that look like they're built by fairies. And I just think that's so whimsical and magical, and I feel like the way that she described the landscape and setting in the town was so vivid and definitely gave a lot of good imagery to help the reader imagine what she's talking about. And there are so many good quotes that I could read from here, so I'll just give a few. But one thing she says a few pages later is, usually pulling into the smooth cobblestone driveway of Aunt Lottie's house feels like exhaling. Today it feels like forgetting how to breathe. So I just love the poetic way that she writes. Another thing she said was, but now I think she was happy to be talking about those things with me, because that's what loving someone is. It's sharing the tiny, stupid, mundane things about your life because they're everything to the people you love. So I won't read anymore, because if you want to read this book for yourself, you probably just want to find quotes that you enjoy and annotate that on your own, and I don't want to spoil anything, but those are just a few examples of the poetic way that she writes, and it's definitely reminiscent of other authors, and I really enjoy that. And that kind of leads me into another thing I really enjoyed about this is I can tell how much Haley was influenced by other writers and infused that influence and inspiration into this book, which I enjoyed. And I also could just tell that she infused things that she loves about romance books into this book. For example, she puts text messages in here, which I personally love, and I'm assuming she does too, or she wouldn't put it in there. But another thing is there, without saying too much, there is something reminiscent of The Notebook in here. So I feel like that's undeniably an inspiration that she used. It just feels like you're reading a book by someone that genuinely loves romance books. And I guess that would be the case for all romance authors, but I just liked that. Now I will say something that I saw people knocking Haley for was switching between super literary poetic language and using big vocabulary words and using like slang or Gen Z type language. But I personally don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that that's very realistic, at least for me. I could be using slang and like Gen Z language 1 second, and then I can also like switch to academic type talk and using different types of words. So I feel like that was an unfounded criticism, but that's just me. And then another thing that I saw people complaining about was that Haley took a lot of inspiration from her own personal experience and put it into this book, and I just don't understand why that's a bad thing, honestly. I really enjoyed that. I could definitely tell how much Blair was inspired by Haley, and I think that's beautiful. And I feel like to some extent all authors do that, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like specifically romance authors, especially if it's like their debut novel, like it's kind of hard not to pull from your own experience with love, and just your own experience in general. And I just don't understand why that's such a bad thing. And like, I'm sure aspects of Declan were inspired by Ryan, but obviously that's her husband, so I just don't understand why that would be bad to put pieces of someone that you love in the book. I actually think it's really beautiful. And another thing I loved about this book was just how all the little details tied together in the end. So for example, the very first line of the book is, "The fear part only come when it's love," and that is written in the dialect of Aunt Lottie, a character in this book. But then near the end, that quote is kind of like unpacked and explained and tied back together. So like just those little intricacies. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil anything, but there are other plot points and little details that are mentioned in the beginning of the book that are tied back in the end of the book. And I just think that that's so special, and it really like makes me feel connected to a book when I can see those details being paid attention to. And I also think that the nickname Declan has for Blair is super cute. And of course, like, can we just appreciate this cover, by the way? I've been holding up this book the whole time. It's so intricate and, like I said, detailed, colorful, and it just feels like a warm hug. Like, it's just so cute, and it definitely gives like summery spring vibes. And also, the drawings before each chapter are adorable. I think that that was such a sweet little detail. So I love that too. I also loved the acknowledgements. It was so special. If you've been watching Haley online, the acknowledgements definitely hit home, and I love what she mentioned about her family and Ryan and how they've been supporting her and all of her friends and everything. So definitely give the acknowledgements a read, because I think those, like I said, were really special and heartfelt. And then overall, I would just say about this book, it had me giggling at certain points, like laughing out loud, and it just felt like very cute and light and cozy at points, but then in other points it also had a lot of depth because it grappled with themes of grief and personal growth and forgiveness and trust and all of these really deep topics that I feel like she handled really well. I know there's been some like debate about that, but I personally feel like she handled them delicately and also made those themes, like portrayed those themes in a realistic way. And I feel like even the miscommunication and the pushing away that was done in this book was justified in the end and like explained in the end. So I did understand why that was put there, and I understood the conflicts and everything like that happened. So overall, I really enjoyed it, and my rating for this will be between 4 stars and 4.25 stars, and I may change that. Like sometimes I change my ratings of my books, and I know that's like very oddly specific to rate in quarter stars, but that's just kind of the vibes that I was feeling. Again, it's hard to rate this book because I'm definitely not unbiased, so it's hard to give an unbiased rating. Now, just for fun, I am gonna share some plot holes that my husband pointed out, because I told him all about the book because he loves to watch Ryan online, and we watched their 50 States in 50 Days series together and everything, and he knows how much that I love watching Haley online. So I shared with him all about the plot of the book, and here are just some things that he mentioned that I'll put in there just for fun. But, and please hear me, if you do not want any spoilers, then please click off this video, because I am going to be spoiling certain parts by saying these things. So, let's just wait a minute for everybody that hasn't read the book. Okay, now that we're all here after having read the book, here are some things that he said he didn't like, and maybe you would agree, which is why I'm sharing. He said that it is unrealistic for a boy that is in high school to be sending a letter to a girlfriend or a love interest or whatever, like actually sending the letter with a stamp on it and addressing. And he said, like, in today's day and age, no teenage boy knows how to do that without help from their mom or their dad. And I don't know, that's why I'm saying I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments if you can prove him wrong, or if you agree with that, if that's a plot hole. But he says, like, in the big 2026, who's actually sending letters. And I told him, like, I have received love letters before or something, but were they stamped and mailed? No, but I don't know. I feel like back in my day in high school, people wrote letters, but I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. But I did tell him that, like, one of the most famous romance novels of all time, The Notebook, what is his name? I can't think of his name. What is that guy's name? Oh, Noah, is that his name? I think that's his name. Noah writes Allie 365 letters. So what do you mean? And nobody's complaining about that. But he said during that time period, that would have been normal. But also, like, wasn't that book in the early 2000s? I don't know. But that's what he said. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing he said was it was unrealistic for Declan's mom to take the letter out of the mailbox and then keep it all those years later, which, again, I feel like could have been explained a little bit more, because the way that it was explained in the book was that Declan's mom thought that she was protecting him from Blair because he didn't want to see Blair when he was recovering, so she just thought that Blair was a threat to his mental health or, like, his healing journey or something. But I feel like that could have been explained a bit more. But again, I said Allie's mom took every single one of those 365 letters out of the mailbox in the notebook, and nobody batted an eye. So, but let me know what you guys think about that. And okay, guys, that's pretty much all I have to say about this book. There were some things that I didn't necessarily love, and there were some things that I really did enjoy. Now, I will say, after watching Haley online for years, and as she's been in this writing process, she's been talking a lot more about how it's given her newfound empathy for other authors. And I feel like just listening to that and seeing Haley kind of, like, talk about herself in her writing process online, I feel like I have developed a deeper empathy for all authors, not just her, but, like, all authors, especially debut authors, because I personally have never written a book, and I can't even imagine how difficult it would be to write, like, a whole book, like a full book, and especially your first try. I feel like this is a wonderful debut novel, and I think that we should all have a little bit more grace on all authors, especially first-time authors, because it has to be, like, such a daunting task. So take everything I'm saying about Haley and other authors with a grain of salt, because I come on here and I review these books, but I've never written a book. I don't know what it's like, and I'm sure that it's extremely difficult. So we should all have a little bit more bend and grace when we discuss authors, in my opinion. But thank you for listening to me yap about this book. Please let me know in the comments what you thought about this book if you've read it, and if you haven't, I hope that this gave you a better idea about if you want to spend your money on it and read it or not. I don't think that it's for everybody. I think that if you really like young adult romance, you would probably love this book and gravitate to this. I think it's a really sweet story all in all. So yeah, I would recommend it. I think that it's worth your money, but like I said, I don't know that it's necessarily for everybody. So that's all I'll say about that. But thank you guys for listening, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.